Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about the music theory of Huntress's Lullaby from Dead by Daylight, as well as her alternate lullaby. If you're interested in learning a little about Huntress's lore and how the rest of her audio works in-game, I have a video I made linked below that you might like. Let's move on. So as I've mentioned before, Huntress's Lullaby is based on a real lullaby named Bayu Bayushki Bayu, also known as the Russian Wolf Lullaby. The song is sang in Russian was essentially used to warn kids not to sleep near the edge of the bed or else they might get dragged off by a wolf and taken away. Because there are many versions, we're not exactly sure how old it is, but many speculate that it's at least 100 years old, although it's not confirmed. Let's listen to a bit of it and figure out the notation.
Баю, баюшки, баю, не ложися на краю, придет серенький волчок и ухватит за бочок.
Alright, so pardon my lack of MuseScore knowledge and experience, but this is what I've notated. Let's listen to the melody played on piano. The original lullaby sits in the key of E-flat minor and only plays 5 different notes, those being B-flat, E-flat, G-flat, F, and D natural. So the first bar of this melody covers an E-flat minor chord. This sounds very nice, but it's somewhat haunting. I would argue most of this feeling comes from the key that we're in. Moving on to Huntress's version, let's first listen to it. You might be able to hear that there's only really one main change to this lullaby's notation, and it's mainly the key that it's in. This version is in the key of D minor and spans the notes of A, D, F, E, and C sharp. The first bar of this melody covers a D minor chord, and the second covers an A7. Ultimately, the melody of this was just transposed down half a step from the original. Let's listen to this on piano. Comparing the actual vocalization of this melody is quite different though. Obviously the original is sang in Russian with proper lyrics, but Huntress's version was done with just la or hum noise. I'm not sure if this was done because the person singing, who was actually a developer for the game early on, didn't know Russian, or maybe because they thought singing the lyrics would be adding too much complication into the game's audio, but it sounds great nonetheless. Moving on to a relatively new addition to the game, we can talk about the newest version of the melody. For a little bit of in-game context, players will only be able to hear this specific version when the killer has a Baba Yaga cosmetic equipped, which was released earlier this year, I believe in January. Why don't we listen to it and see if we can pick out some differences? Off the bat, you'll notice that the melody changes somewhat drastically in the first bar. These first 2 bars are played in C minor. At the beginning, rather than repeating the same note 4 times, it repeats twice and then ascends up. You'll also see that there's no accidental in the second bar, but then it gets even more interesting. When these 2 bars go to repeat like the other versions, this one ends up switching keys back to the original key of D minor, creating 2 more new bars. Once again, you'll see that the third bar of this isn't the same 4 notes and we're missing an accidental in the fourth. If the second bar of this song were to follow the original notation, we would have heard a B natural instead of a B flat. For the fourth bar, we would have heard it as a C sharp rather than a C natural. So summed up, the big differences in this version is that the 4-bar phrase is repeated rather than a 2-bar phrase, and both the melody and key of these phrases are different compared to the original. Let's listen to this played on piano. I'd also like to note that her pitch doesn't seem to be 100% spot on to this notation. The notation is more of a depiction of what she would sound like if she wasn't slightly sharp or flat, if she realistically had perfect pitch. I promise that there's no disrespect in that comment. I honestly think it adds a lot to her character. Now, that was a lot of talking about bars, so let's move on to the vocalization of this version. It seems this new voice fluctuates between humming and using vocables, aka the la or ah of a voice, not real words. Huntress's voice also seems to be a bit breathier than her original version. Therefore, I have a suspicion that this new version was sang by somebody else. She also seems to cackle and honestly act a lot crazier when you hear her in-game. Apart from her lullaby, she seems like she's out of breath from attacking and nearly screaming whenever she hits players. It's honestly kind of terrifying. Her overall voice in-game also seems a bit raspy. So that was my analysis of Bayu Bayushki Bayu, both the original Russian lullaby and Huntress's versions. I especially love that the new version not only evolves notation-wise, but changes her tone. If you have any thoughts on these versions, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.